Now let's begin. The snow fell heavy outside the window of our suburban home, each flake catching the glow of Christmas lights strung along the gutters. I watched my daughter Daisy's breath fog the glass as she pressed her face against it, waiting for the last of the dinner guests to arrive. She was 12 now, with her mother's dark hair but my gray eyes. Eyes that, my mother used to say, could see straight through lies. "Dad, when's Uncle Elias getting here?" Daisy asked, turning from the window. I checked my watch. "Any minute now, sweetheart." My wife Cheryl appeared from the kitchen, her expression tight. "James, I still don't understand why you invited him. Your uncle hasn't spoken to your family in 2 decades. "That's exactly why I invited him," I said evenly. "He reached out, said he wanted to reconnect. It's Christmas." Cheryl's jaw clenched, but she forced a smile. "Well, Mother's not going to be pleased. You know how she feels about last-minute additions to her planned dinners." I didn't know. Jacqueline Johnson, my mother-in-law, had opinions about everything in our lives, from the neighborhood we lived in to the school Daisy attended to the car I drove. For 15 years of marriage, I'd watched her orchestrate our existence like a conductor before an orchestra, and Cheryl danced to every note. The doorbell rang. Daisy bolted for the door before I could move, and I followed behind her. When she pulled it open, Uncle Elias stood there in a worn leather jacket, snow dusting his silver hair. He was 63 but carried himself like a man 20 years younger. His face, weathered and angular, broke into a genuine smile when he saw Daisy. "You must be my great-niece," he said, his voice warm. "Last time I saw your daddy, he wasn't much older than you." "I'm Daisy," she said, eyes wide with curiosity. Beautiful name for a beautiful young lady. He looked past her to me. "James, you've done well for yourself." We embraced, and I felt something I hadn't in years, a connection to my own blood. My father had passed when I was 19, and my mother 3 years after that. Elias had vanished shortly after her funeral, and I'd always wondered why. Now, standing in my doorway, he felt like a piece of my past I'd thought was lost forever. "Come in," I said. "You remember Cheryl?" "Of course." He nodded politely to my wife, who gave him a thin smile. "Though I believe we only met once, at your wedding." "That's right," Cheryl said. "James, your mother-in-law is in the dining room. We should." "The infamous Jacqueline," Elias said, and something in his tone made Cheryl stiffen. "I've heard so much about her over the years." I caught the subtle shift in his expression, a flicker of something knowing, almost predatory. Before I could question it, voices erupted from the dining room. Jacqueline's commanding tone rose above the others. "Absolutely unacceptable to spring guests on me. I planned this meal for 8, not 9. We entered the dining room where Jacqueline held court at the head of the table, her husband Wallace sitting meekly to her right. Cheryl's younger sister, Brandy, occupied the opposite side with her husband Marvin, both dressed in expensive casual wear that screamed country club. The table was set with Jacqueline's prized china, crystal wine glasses catching the candlelight. Jacqueline's eyes locked on Elias, and I watched her face drain of color for just a fraction of a second before her mask snapped back into place. "Mr. Kent." What an unexpected surprise. "Mrs. Johnson." Elias's smile didn't reach his eyes. "You're looking well. Prosperity clearly agrees with you." There was an edge to those words that made Wallace shift uncomfortably. Jacqueline recovered quickly, gesturing to an empty chair. "Please sit." We were just about to begin. Dinner started with forced pleasantries. Jacqueline dominated the conversation as always, discussing her charity work, the new addition to their lake house, Brandy's husband's recent promotion. I'd heard variations of these same stories for years, the Johnson family's endless parade of achievements and acquisitions. Meanwhile, my own career as a civil engineer was rarely mentioned unless Jacqueline wanted to critique something about it. "James, dear," Jacqueline said as the main course was served, "have you given any more thought to that position I mentioned? Wallace's friend at the firm is still looking for someone, and the salary would be considerably better than what you're making now." "I'm happy where I am," I replied, the same answer I'd given a dozen times. "Yes, but think of Daisy's future. Private school tuition isn't getting any cheaper. If you just—" "He said he's happy, Mother," Cheryl interjected, but her tone suggested she agreed with Jacqueline. Uncle Elias had been quiet through most of the meal, observing with an intensity that reminded me of a chess player studying the board. Now he set down his fork and looked directly at Daisy. "Tell me, Daisy," he said, his voice carrying across the table. Did you enjoy the lake house I left you? The room went silent. Cheryl's fork clattered against her plate. Wallace's hand froze halfway to his wine glass. Brandy and Marvin exchanged sharp glances. But it was Jacqueline's reaction that struck me most. She choked on her wine, coughing violently as Wallace patted her back. Daisy looked confused. I don't have a lake house, Uncle Elias. Elias's smile widened, but there was no warmth in it now. No? That's interesting. Because 20 years ago, your great-grandmother Paulette Johnson left explicit instructions in her will. Her lake house property, the one on Crystal Lake, worth about $2 million now, was to be held in trust for her first great-grandchild. That would be you, Daisy. That's enough, Jacqueline snapped, her face flushed. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, Elias Kent, but it's not a game, Jacqueline. Elias's voice cut through her objection like a blade. I was there when Paulette drafted that will. I witnessed it, and I know exactly what happened after she died. My mind reeled. Cheryl's grandmother, Paulette, had passed away 6 months before Daisy was born. I remembered the funeral, remembered Jacqueline's tears, remembered the reading of the will where the lake house had supposedly gone to Jacqueline and Wallace. I'd never questioned it. This is absurd, Cheryl said, her voice shaking. Grandmother left that house to my parents. Everyone knows that. Everyone knows what they were told, Elias corrected. He turned to me, and I saw something in his eyes, pity mixed with anger. James, your daughter has been robbed of her inheritance. And I think it's time someone told you the truth. Jacqueline stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Wallace, we're leaving. I will not sit here and be accused of. Sit down, mother. The words came from Cheryl, but they lacked conviction. Open your grandmother's closet tonight, Elias said, his gaze never leaving mine. The master bedroom in the house on Crystal Lake. And you'll find everything. You have no right. Jacqueline's composure shattered completely. That house is mine. Paulette gave it to me because I took care of her, because you manipulated a dying woman and forged documents after her death, Elias finished calmly. But I kept copies, Jacqueline. I've kept everything. The revelation hung in the air like smoke. Daisy looked from face to face, trying to understand. Cheryl had gone pale, her eyes meeting her mother's in what looked like silent communication. Brandy stared at her plate, guilt written across her features. And I sat there, 15 years of my marriage suddenly recontextualizing itself. The way Jacqueline had insisted we live close to her. The way she'd pushed me towards certain jobs, certain decisions. The way she'd slowly, methodically separated me from my own family, my own uncle, even my own daughter in subtle ways. James, Cheryl began, reaching for my hand. I pulled away, looking at her, really looking at her, for the first time in months, maybe years. Did you know? The hesitation before her answer told me everything. It's complicated. It's theft, Elias said flatly. It's fraud. And it's about to come to light. I stood, my chair echoing Jacqueline's scrape against the floor. Daisy, get your coat. Uncle Elias, you're coming with us. I looked at my wife, this woman I'd loved, who I'd built a life with. I don't know what you've been part of, Cheryl. But tonight, I'm going to find out. James, please. Jacqueline's voice took on a pleading tone I'd never heard before. We can discuss this like adults. There's no need for dramatics. Dramatics? I felt anger burning through the shock. You stole from my daughter. From a child. And you've been living off that theft for 12 years while sitting at our table, judging my career, my choices, my life. Wallace finally spoke, his voice weak. Son, maybe we should all calm down and... I'm not your son, I said coldly. I never was. I was just useful, wasn't I? Someone you could control, someone who wouldn't ask questions. Elias stood beside me, placing a hand on my shoulder. The lake house is empty tonight. Paulette's bedroom has been left untouched per the terms of the real will. Another detail Jacqueline couldn't change without raising suspicions. Everything you need to know is in that closet. Daisy appeared with our coats, her eyes wide but trusting. She'd heard enough to know something was wrong. But she looked at me the way she always had, like I could fix anything, solve any problem. And looking back at her, I made a silent promise. Whatever I found tonight, whoever had been lying to me, I would make this right. Not just for Daisy, but for my mother, my father, the family I'd let slip away while trying to please people who'd been deceiving me all along. Let's go, I said. As we walked toward the door, Jacqueline's voice followed us, desperate now. You can't prove anything. That will was destroyed. There's no evidence. Elias paused in the doorway, looking back at her with something close to satisfaction. That's where you're wrong, Jacqueline. I've been waiting 20 years for this. And I've kept everything. The drive to Crystal Lake took 40 minutes through snow-dusted back roads. Daisy sat in the back seat, quiet but alert, while Elias rode up front beside me. The silence stretched for the first 20 minutes before I finally spoke. Why now? Why wait 20 years? Elias stared out at the passing trees, their branches heavy with snow. Because I needed you to see it yourself. If I'd come to you 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you would have believed Cheryl. Believed Jacqueline. They had you wrapped around their fingers, James. I watched it happen at your wedding. Saw how they operated. Your mother saw it too before she died. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. My mother knew about this. Not about the will specifically, but she knew the Johnsons were calculating. She tried to warn you, remember? Said Cheryl's family was too controlling, too involved in your relationship. The memory surfaced, painful and clear. My mother pulling me aside 2 weeks before the wedding, her face creased with concern. James, are you sure about this? That woman's mother treats you like a project, not a son-in-law. I dismissed her worries as wedding jitters, as a mother not wanting to let go of her son. I should have listened, I said quietly. You were in love. Or you thought you were. Sometimes it's hard to see the cage when someone's building it one bar at a time. Elias glanced back at Daisy. But you gave me something worth waiting for. A great niece who deserves what's rightfully hers. Dad, Daisy's voice was small. Is Mom in trouble? I met her eyes in the rearview mirror. I don't know yet, sweetheart. But whatever happens, you and I are going to be okay. I promise. The lake house appeared around a bend. A sprawling 2-story structure of cedar and stone, lights off, sitting on the frozen shore like a sleeping giant. I'd been here exactly twice in 15 years, both times for brief family gatherings where Jacqueline had made it clear this was her space. Now I understood why she'd never welcomed us. Elias pulled out a key. I had this made from Paulette's original. She gave me a set before she died, asked me to watch over things. I failed her for a long time, but not anymore. Inside, the house smelled of cedar and old memories. Dust covers draped the furniture in the main room. Elias led us upstairs to the master bedroom, flicking on lights as we went. The room was frozen in time. Paulette's personal effects still on the dresser, her reading glasses on the nightstand, a photograph of her and her late husband on the wall. The closet, Elias said, opening double doors to reveal a walk-in space lined with hanging clothes and boxes. At first, I saw nothing unusual. Then Elias reached up to a shelf above the hanging rod and pressed something. A section of the back wall clicked and swung inward, revealing a hidden space about 4 feet wide. Inside sat a fireproof safe. Paulette was nobody's fool, Elias explained, kneeling before it. She knew Jacqueline. Knew her daughter had married a good man who was too honest for his own good. Knew she'd have a great-grandchild who deserved better than being raised by that family of vultures. He spun the combination lock, a series of numbers I recognized as Paulette's birthday. So she made provisions. The safe opened. Inside were manila folders, a lockbox, and a leather journal. Elias pulled out the journal first, handing it to me. Read, he said simply. I opened to the first page. Paulette's handwriting, elegant despite her age, filled the lines. If you're reading this, I'm gone, and Jacqueline has likely done exactly what I feared. My daughter is not a bad person at her core, but she's weak. Weak to greed, weak to status, weak to the need for control. She'll take what I've left for my great-grandchild. She'll rationalize it, justify it, convince herself she deserves it more. But the truth is documented here. The real will, the trust documents, the deed to this house that should pass to the first child of my grandchildren. I've made Elias Kent the executor of this trust, the only person I could trust to see it through. Page after page detailed Paulette's concerns about her daughter, her observations of how Jacqueline manipulated her family, her hopes for whoever her great-grandchild would be. It was heartbreaking and infuriating in equal measure. Dad, Daisy stood beside me, looking at the documents Elias was now spreading on the bed. I don't understand. Why would Grandma Jacqueline steal from me? How did you explain greed to a 12-year-old? How did you tell your daughter that her grandmother valued money over her own flesh and blood? Some people, Elias said gently, get so used to wanting more that they forget what really matters. Your great-grandmother Paulette understood that. She wanted you to have something real, something solid. This house, the land, the investments she tied to it. It's worth close to $3 million now. That's yours, Daisy. Your college fund, your future, your security. I pulled out my phone, taking pictures of every document. The original will, dated 6 months before Paulette's death, clearly stating the lake house and associated trust fund were for her first great-grandchild. The trust documents naming Elias as executor. The deed with annotations in Paulette's hand. And most damning, a copy of the forged will that Jacqueline had submitted to probate, with notations in the margins where Paulette had documented the differences. She knew. I breathed. Before she died, she knew Jacqueline was planning this. Paulette had a stroke 3 weeks before she passed, Elias explained. Couldn't speak, could barely move her right hand. But her mind was sharp. She watched Jacqueline bring in her own lawyer, watched her trying to change things. Paulette couldn't stop it, couldn't speak up, so she made sure I'd know where to find the truth. My phone buzzed. Cheryl. Then Jacqueline. Then Cheryl again. I ignored them all. What do we do now? I asked. Elias's expression hardened. Now? Now we make them pay. But not just through the courts, James. That's too clean, too simple. People like Jacqueline, like Cheryl if she's been complicit, they care about reputation, status, control. We take all of it. I want them to hurt, I admitted, surprising myself with the venom in my voice. The way they've hurt my daughter. The way they've manipulated our lives. They will, Elias promised. But we do this smart. We do this thorough. And when we're done, they won't just lose the house and the money. They'll lose everything they've built on that foundation of lies. I looked at Daisy, at her trusting face, at the life that should have been so different if not for greed and deception. Then I looked at the documents spread before me, the evidence of a decade-plus conspiracy. Tell me what to do, I said to Elias. He smiled, and for the first time since he'd arrived at our door, I saw the ruthlessness beneath his kind exterior. First, we make copies of everything. Then we reach out to some old friends of mine, people who know how to investigate, how to dig up buried truths. Your mother-in-law has been living high off your daughter's money for 12 years. Let's find out exactly what she's done with it. We stayed at the lake house that night. I called a friend who owed me a favor, Jeremy Ho, a forensic accountant I'd worked with on a bridge construction fraud case 3 years back. He arrived at midnight with his laptop and a predatory gleam in his eyes. You weren't kidding about the paper trail, Jeremy said, photographing documents with a professional-grade camera. This is beautiful. Clear intent, clear fraud, clear damages. But you want more than just a court case, right? I want to know everything, I confirmed. Where the money went, what they bought with it, who else knew. All of it. Give me 72 hours, Jeremy said. I'll trace every dollar. Daisy had fallen asleep on the couch, wrapped in one of Paulette's old quilts. I sat watching her, my mind churning through 15 years of marriage, trying to separate the real from the performance. Had Cheryl ever loved me? Or had I just been a convenient choice? A stable earner who wouldn't ask questions, wouldn't challenge her mother's authority? Elias sat across from me, nursing a glass of whiskey he'd found in Paulette's liquor cabinet. You're wondering if any of it was real. How did you know? Because I went through something similar years ago. Different circumstances, but the same feeling of betrayal. He took a sip. My wife, your Aunt Margaret, came from money. Old money. Her family never approved of me. I was too working class, too rough around the edges. For 10 years, I tried to fit their mold, be what they wanted. Then I discovered they'd been siphoning money from a business we'd built together, hiding assets, preparing to push me out. What did you do? I walked away. Took the hit, started over. I was 40 years old with nothing but my truck and my tools. He met my eyes. It was the best decision I ever made. But James, you have something I didn't. You have a daughter who needs you to fight. And you have evidence that can actually hold up in court. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a voicemail from Cheryl, her voice cracking. James, please. We need to talk. Mother's having a breakdown. She's saying crazy things about Uncle Elias trying to destroy the family. Please just come home so we can work this out. I deleted it. When your mother died, Elias said quietly, she made me promise something. She said if I ever saw you losing yourself to that family, if I ever saw you becoming someone you weren't, I should step in. I've watched you from a distance for years, James. Watched you shrink yourself to fit their expectations. Watch your light dim. Tonight was supposed to happen the moment Daisy was born, but I hesitated. I thought maybe I was wrong. Maybe Cheryl would do the right thing, tell you about the inheritance. But she didn't. None of them did. They planned to keep it forever, I realized. They planned to keep it until Daisy was 18, then tell her it was a gift from her loving grandmother Jacqueline. They'd look like heroes, and you'd never know what was stolen from her. Elias leaned forward. That's why we can't just take them to court and walk away. We need to expose who they really are, not just to the world, but to everyone who's enabled them. Their friends, their country club, their church, their business associates. We burn it all down. A dark part of me thrilled at the thought. But I looked at Daisy again and felt the weight of responsibility. I need to do this right. Not just for revenge, but for her future. Then we do both, Elias said. We get her inheritance back, and we make sure the people who stole it can never hurt anyone else again. By morning, we had a plan. Jeremy had already started pulling financial records, Jacqueline and Wallace's bank statements, property records, investment portfolios. Elias had contacted a lawyer he trusted, someone who specialized in estate fraud. And I had made a decision that would change everything. I was filing for divorce. Not because I wanted to hurt Cheryl, but because I couldn't share my life with someone who'd lied to me for 12 years. Someone who'd watched her mother steal from our daughter and said nothing. The trust was gone, and without trust, marriage was just a legal contract. My phone rang. This time it was Brandy, Cheryl's sister. I answered, curious what angle they'd try next. James, thank God. Listen, I know how this looks, but you have to understand. Mother told us grandmother changed her mind at the end. She said the new will was what grandmother really wanted, that she'd been confused when she wrote the original one. Brandy, your grandmother had a stroke. She couldn't speak. How exactly did she communicate this change of heart? Silence. Then, quietly, Mother said, she said grandmother squeezed her hand when she suggested the change. That was her consent. The audacity of the lie took my breath away. And you believe that? You all just accepted it. We wanted to believe it, Brandy admitted, and for the first time, I heard genuine shame in her voice. The money made everything easier. Marvin's business was struggling, and Mother helped us out. We told ourselves it was what grandmother would have wanted anyway. It doesn't matter what you told yourselves. You stole from a child. From my daughter. I know. James, I know. I've been sick about it for years, but Mother, she has this way of making you believe things, of twisting everything around until wrong seems right. Brandy's voice dropped to a whisper. If you take this to court, we'll lose everything. Marvin's business, our house, our reputation. Mother used that money to prop all of us up. We're all in debt to her now. That's not my problem. Please. I'll testify. I'll tell the truth about what happened, about how Mother pushed the forged will through. Just, can we work something out privately? Keep this out of the courts, out of the papers. I thought about it. A private settlement would be faster, cleaner. But it would also let Jacqueline maintain her facade, keep her reputation intact in the community where she'd built her empire of lies. No, I said finally. This is going public. All of it. You'll destroy the whole family. Your mother destroyed this family 12 years ago. I'm just making sure everyone knows it. I hung up. Elias nodded approval. Now they're panicking. Now they'll make mistakes. He was right. Over the next 48 hours, my phone became a battlefield. Cheryl called crying, then angry, then bargaining. Jacqueline left voicemails that ranged from threatening lawsuits to offering a generous settlement to suggesting I was having a mental breakdown. Wallace sent a rambling text about family values and forgiveness that read like Jacqueline had dictated it. But I held firm, and so did Daisy. When I sat her down and explained everything, the theft, the lies, the upcoming legal battle, she surprised me with her strength. So Grandma Jacqueline has been using my money? She asked. Yes. And Mom knew? I think so, yes. Daisy was quiet for a long moment, processing. Then, I want it back. Not because I care about money, but because it's not fair. Great-Grandma Paulette wanted me to have it, and they took it. We're going to get it back, I promised. Every penny, plus interest, plus damages. And your grandmother is going to face consequences. Good, Daisy said with a fierceness that reminded me of my mother. She's always been mean to you, Dad. I noticed. The way she talks to you like you're not smart enough, not good enough. I hated it. The fact that my 12-year-old daughter had been aware of the subtle put-downs, the manipulations I'd accepted as normal, gutted me. How long had I been sleepwalking through my own life? Jeremy called on the third day with his preliminary findings. James, you need to sit down for this. The rabbit hole goes deep. I put him on speaker. Elias leaned in close. Okay, Jeremy began. So the Lake House Trust was worth about $1.2 million when Paulette died. In the 12 years since, Jacqueline has been drawing from it regularly, calling it estate management fees and property maintenance. She's pulled out approximately $400,000 in cash over that time. $400,000? I repeated, stunned. It gets better. Or worse, depending on your perspective. She also took out a home equity line of credit against the lake house, another $300,000. That money went to bail out Brandy and Marvin's business 3 years ago when they were facing bankruptcy. Then there's the country club membership she bought with trust funds, the car she leased, the loans she made to various family members. How much total? Elias asked. She's depleted the trust by approximately $850,000. The property has appreciated, so the total value is still around $2.8 million, but the liquid assets are gone. Oh, and she never paid taxes on any of the withdrawals. The IRS is going to be very interested in this. I felt sick. So even if we win in court, the money's gone. Not necessarily. We can go after Jacqueline and Wallace's personal assets to recover damages. And if Brandy and Marvin received funds fraudulently, they're liable too. Plus, there's the criminal angle, estate fraud, tax evasion, possibly identity theft since she signed trust documents as Daisy's guardian without your knowledge or consent. Build the case, I said. Everything. Criminal and civil. I want them prosecuted to the fullest extent. After Jeremy hung up, Elias whistled low. She really did bleed it dry. All while sitting at your dinner table acting like she was doing you a favor by tolerating you. What's our next move? We file. Civil suit for fraud and theft, criminal complaint with the prosecutor, motion to freeze all of Jacqueline and Wallace's assets pending investigation. We hit them with everything at once, overwhelm them before they can mount a coordinated defense. And Cheryl? Elias's expression softened slightly. That's your call, James. If she was a knowing participant, she's liable too. If she was just complicit through silence, that's a different matter. But either way, the marriage is over, isn't it? I nodded. I'll never be able to trust her again. She watched her mother steal from our daughter and said nothing. That's unforgivable. Then we separate her from the main case, make her cooperate in exchange for reduced liability. Use her testimony to nail Jacqueline. Elias pulled out his phone. I'll call the lawyer, get the papers drafted. We file Monday morning. That gave us 3 days. 3 days to prepare for a war that would tear apart everything I'd built in 15 years of marriage. 3 days before I became the enemy of the family I tried so hard to please. I spent those 3 days documenting everything. Every time Jacqueline had pushed me toward a job I didn't want. Every time she'd criticized my parenting. Every time she'd made decisions about our lives without consulting me. I wrote it all down, seeing the pattern clearly for the first time. A systematic campaign to control and diminish me while elevating herself and her family. Sunday evening, I took Daisy out for dinner, just the two of us. She ordered spaghetti and meatballs, her favorite, and we talked about everything except the coming storm. Are you scared? She asked as we finished dessert. A little, I admitted. This is going to be hard. People might say mean things about us. Your mom's going to be upset. But we're doing the right thing. Yes, we're doing the right thing. Then I'm not scared, Daisy said firmly. You'll protect me. You always do. Her faith in me was humbling and terrifying, because I couldn't guarantee how this would end, couldn't promise that fighting back would work out the way we hoped. But I could promise I'd try. For her, for the memory of my parents, for the man I used to be before Jacqueline Johnson started reshaping me into something more convenient for her purposes. Monday morning arrived cold and clear. Elias picked us up at 7, and we drove to the county courthouse. The lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Hope Glenn, met us on the steps with a briefcase full of documents. This is going to make waves, she warned. The Johnsons have a lot of friends in this county. You're going to face pushback. Let them push, I said. We have the truth. We filed everything at once. The civil suit, the criminal complaint, the divorce petition, the motion to freeze assets. By noon, the news was spreading through the county's legal community. By evening, Jacqueline had lawyered up with one of the most expensive firms in the state. The battle had begun. The first week was brutal. Jacqueline's lawyer, a slick corporate type named Carrie Sandoval, filed motion after motion trying to get the case dismissed, trying to seal the records, trying to claim the statute of limitations had expired. Judge Hope Glenn, no relation to our lawyer, just an unfortunate coincidence, shot down every attempt. Meanwhile, Jeremy's forensic accounting work was bearing fruit. He'd traced the trust fund withdrawals to specific purchases, a Mercedes for Brandy, a boat for Wallace, renovations on Jacqueline's primary residence that cost $150,000. Every dollar was documented, photographed, evidence of a systematic looting. The local paper got wind of the story. Prominent family faces fraud allegations, read the headline. By the second week, it was all anyone in our social circle could talk about. Cheryl's phone blew up with messages from her friends, her book club, her yoga class. The women who'd once fawned over Jacqueline now whispered about her in grocery store aisles. Cheryl showed up at the lake house one evening, where Daisy and I had been staying. I almost didn't let her in. 5 minutes, I said. She looked terrible, eyes red from crying, hair unwashed, wearing the same clothes I'd seen her in 2 days earlier. James, please. We can fix this. Mother's willing to return the money, all of it. We can make this go away quietly. It's too late for quiet. It's not. We can settle, sign agreements, put this behind us. She grabbed my hands. Please, think about Daisy. Think about what this is doing to her. What it's doing to her. I pulled away. Your mother stole $3 million from our daughter, and you want me to think about how the consequences are affecting her? Where was this concern for Daisy 12 years ago? I didn't know. Cheryl's voice broke. I swear to God, James, I didn't know the full extent. Mother told me grandmother had changed the will, that it was legal. I believed her. When did you find out the truth? She hesitated. 2 years ago. Brandy told me during Thanksgiving. She was drunk and feeling guilty. 2 years. 2 years of living with me, sleeping beside me, raising our daughter together, all while knowing the truth. Get out, I said quietly. James, get out of this house. Get out of our lives. You had 2 years to tell me, to make this right, and you chose your mother over your own daughter. There's nothing left to say. Cheryl left sobbing. I felt nothing but cold determination. The criminal investigation was proceeding faster than the civil suit. The prosecutor, a young woman named Stacy Archer, saw the case as a career maker. She subpoenaed bank records, interviewed witnesses, built a case that Jacqueline had committed multiple felonies, fraud, embezzlement, tax evasion, forgery. Brandy broke first. Facing potential charges herself, she agreed to testify against her mother in exchange for immunity. The story she told was damning. Jacqueline had planned the theft before Paulette even died, had forged the will with the help of a corrupt notary who'd since left the state, had systematically drained the trust fund while telling her family it was their money to use as they saw fit. Wallace was next. Faced with the choice between supporting his wife and saving himself, he chose self-preservation. His testimony revealed that Jacqueline had been the mastermind, that he'd merely gone along with it because he was afraid of her. The trial started 4 months after we'd filed. The courtroom was packed, with journalists, with curious onlookers, with members of our community who wanted to see the mighty Jacqueline Johnson brought low. She sat at the defense table in an expensive suit, her face a mask of dignified outrage. But I could see the cracks in her armor, the way her hands shook when she thought no one was looking. The prosecution's case was overwhelming. Documents, testimony, expert witnesses who explained how the fraud had been perpetrated. Jeremy walked the jury through every fraudulent transaction, every forged signature, every lie that had been told to maintain the deception. Jacqueline's lawyer tried to paint her as a grieving daughter who'd simply misunderstood her mother's wishes. But under cross-examination, the facade crumbled. When confronted with the forged notary seal, with the testimony of Brandy and Wallace, with the mathematical impossibility of her version of events, she had no answers. On the third day of trial, during a particularly brutal cross-examination, Jacqueline finally snapped. "It should have been mine," she screamed at the prosecutor. "I took care of her for years. I earned that money. What did that child ever do to deserve it?" The courtroom went silent. Even her own lawyer looked horrified. "That child," the prosecutor said quietly, "was your granddaughter, and the money was never yours to take." The jury deliberated for 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. Jacqueline's sentencing came a month later. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, showed no mercy. "Mrs. Johnson, you stole from a child. You stole from your own granddaughter, someone who should have been able to trust you above all others. You corrupted the legal process, evaded taxes, and then spent years living lavishly off the proceeds of your crimes while manipulating your family to maintain your deception." She looked over her glasses at Jacqueline. 8 years in federal prison. Full restitution of all stolen funds plus damages and interest, totaling $3.2 million. Permanent ban from serving as executor or trustee of any estate. And I'm recommending to the IRS that they pursue their own criminal charges for tax evasion. Jacqueline went pale. Wallace, who'd received a suspended sentence in exchange for his testimony, sat in the gallery and wept. But my attention was on Daisy, sitting beside me, watching her grandmother being led away in handcuffs. I'd worried this moment might traumatize her, might make her feel guilty for the consequences of seeking justice. Instead, she looked at me and said, "Great-Grandma Paulette would be proud of us." She was right. The aftermath took another 6 months to fully resolve. Jacqueline and Wallace's assets were seized and sold to pay the restitution. Their house, their cars, their country club membership, all of it went to repay what they'd stolen. Brandy and Marvin had to sell their house too, using the proceeds to return the money they'd received. The lake house and what remained of the trust fund were transferred to Daisy's name, with me as trustee until she turned 18. The total value, after legal fees and recovered funds, came to just under $3 million. My divorce from Cheryl was finalized quietly. She didn't contest custody, couldn't, really, given her role in the fraud. I got full custody of Daisy, and Cheryl got supervised visitation rights that she rarely exercised. The last I heard, she'd moved 3 states away, trying to start over where people didn't know the Johnson name. Uncle Elias stayed in our lives. He moved into the lake house, fixing it up, making it a home again instead of a monument to greed. Daisy loved having him around, loved hearing stories about my father and mother, about the family I'd lost touch with during my marriage. 1 year after that Christmas dinner, we held another celebration, just the 3 of us this time. The lake had frozen over, and we skated on it as snow fell softly around us. Daisy, now 13, was already talking about what she wanted to do with her inheritance when she was older. "I think Great-Grandma Paulette wanted me to use it to help people," she said as we warmed up inside afterward. "Maybe I could start a scholarship fund, or help kids whose families can't afford college." I hugged her close, overwhelmed with pride. Despite everything she'd been through, the betrayal, the trial, the loss of her grandmother and mother as she'd known them, she'd emerged stronger and kinder than I could have hoped. "Your great-grandmother would love that," Elias said from his chair by the fire. "She always believed money was a tool, not an end in itself. Use it well, do good with it, and pass something better to the next generation." That night, after Daisy had gone to bed, Elias and I sat on the deck overlooking the frozen lake, watching the stars emerge. "You did good, James," he said. "Took real strength to fight back the way you did." I almost didn't, I admitted. There were moments when it would have been easier to just take a quiet settlement and move on. But you didn't. You chose the harder path because it was the right one. That's what makes you your father's son. He raised his glass. To family. The one we're born into and the one we choose. I clinked my glass against his. To family. In the house behind us, Daisy slept peacefully in her great-grandmother's old room, surrounded by the love and legacy that should have been hers all along. Jacqueline was in prison, stripped of her reputation and her stolen wealth. Wallace lived in a modest apartment on his Social Security, a shell of the man who'd once pretended to be a patriarch. Brandy and Marvin were rebuilding their lives from scratch, finally free of Jacqueline's manipulation. And me? I was free too. Free from the weight of trying to please people who'd never valued me. Free from a marriage built on lies. Free to raise my daughter in truth and integrity, to teach her that justice matters, that standing up for yourself matters, that family is supposed to lift you up, not tear you down. The next morning, I woke to find Daisy and Elias making pancakes, laughing over some joke I'd missed. This was my family now, small but genuine, built on trust instead of obligation. My phone buzzed with a message from Hope Glenn, our lawyer. The final settlement check had cleared. After all debts were paid, Daisy's trust fund stood at $3.4 million, carefully invested in a diversified portfolio that would continue to grow. But more than the money, more than the legal victory, what mattered was sitting at that breakfast table with two people who genuinely loved each other, who'd fought together and won together. Jacqueline had tried to build an empire on lies and theft. Instead, she'd built her own prison, one bar of deception at a time, until the walls closed in and there was nowhere left to run. And Daisy? She'd gotten everything that was rightfully hers. Not just the inheritance, but the knowledge that truth matters, that courage counts, that standing up to bullies and thieves is worth the fight. As we ate breakfast and planned our day, I thought about that Christmas dinner 1 year ago, about the moment Uncle Elias had spoken the words that changed everything. If he hadn't come back, if he hadn't kept those documents, if he hadn't cared enough to wait 20 years for the right moment to strike, none of this would have been possible. Uncle Elias, I said, interrupting the conversation, I never properly thanked you for keeping those documents, for waiting, for coming back. He smiled, that same knowing smile I'd seen the first night. I made a promise to your mother, James, and to Paulette. Some promises are worth keeping, no matter how long it takes. Daisy reached across the table, taking both our hands. I'm glad you came back, Uncle Elias. I'm glad we're all together now. We sat there, 3 generations connected by love and loyalty, by the courage to fight for what was right, by the refusal to let greed and manipulation win. Outside, the sun rose over Crystal Lake, painting the ice in shades of gold and pink. A new day, a new year, a new beginning built on the solid foundation of truth. And somewhere in a federal prison, Jacqueline Johnson woke to another day of consequences, finally paying for crimes she'd thought she'd gotten away with. Justice, I'd learned, wasn't always swift. But when it came, when you fought for it with everything you had, when you refused to back down even when the easier path beckoned, it was worth the wait. Daisy squeezed my hand, her eyes bright with hope for the future. And I squeezed back, silently promising that I'd spend the rest of my life making sure she never had to fight these battles alone, that she'd always have family who chose truth over convenience, integrity over comfort. The lake house, Daisy's lake house now, stood solid behind us, no longer a monument to greed but a testament to justice. Great-Grandma Paulette's legacy lived on, not in the money she'd left behind, but in the courage she'd inspired us to find. And as we cleared the breakfast dishes together, planning the day ahead, I realized something profound. I was happier now, with less money and a broken family, than I'd ever been trying to please people who'd never valued me. Because this life, this small circle of genuine love and trust, was real. It was earned. It was ours. And no one could ever take that away. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.